Hello and welcome to today's Rocksmith developer stream. I am your host and the community developer for Rocksmith, Doug Lilly. Thank you so much for being here today. Once again, we are in my dining area that I never eat at. It's mostly become a crafting station that I take over one day a week. So I'm glad to have this table, glad to be here with you. If you've never watched before, what we like to do on these streams is we like to look at some music, like to talk about music, and that's mostly what we do. So we're going to have a special guest performer today from the community. That's going to be CJ Blandford. We're going to hear from him later, as well as some other people in our staff. Right now, I would like to, before I introduce our guests, I also want to let you know that, as always, we are going to have some raffles throughout the stream, so look out for those. And anytime throughout the stream you have a question for us, let us know. Tag UB Jurassic, that is Brian Turner. He is our community manager over in North Carolina. He will take your questions and get those to us, as well as handle the raffles when we get there. For now, I want to say hello to our live guests for today, Andrew Levin and Brian Pody. Welcome, guys.
What up?
Going. Andrew, you've been here since we've been doing the at-home iteration of the stream. Brian Pody, it's been a while. Welcome you back. For anybody who doesn't know right now, Andrew Levin is a musical content developer in Ubisoft San Francisco, and Brian Pody is the technical audio designer here in Ubisoft San Francisco. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
So we talked what we're going to look at a little bit later from Andrew. Andrew, you've set up a nice talk about compression. So we're going to talk about compression and how to use it, what it does. You've given us a pretty great overview, which we'll see pretty soon. But for now, let's talk about effects in general. Brian, I think a lot of our viewers are aware that you make guitars, you upgrade guitars frequently. You create your own pickups for guitars, but you also create your own guitar pedals, your effects pedals.
Yeah, I've gotten into building quite a few pedals, especially now.
Sure.
It's a good thing to do to pass the time. But I started building pedals at some point last year.
Okay. So it's a pretty recent thing. What do you have to know? Like, if you want to make your own pedal, what's the first thing that you need to know?
There's a couple different routes to go, right? You can either say, I'm going to buy a kit, and the kit's going to tell me exactly what to do, just step by step, and I can do that. The other thing you can do is look at like layouts, which visually show you where everything goes, and within the board. Or the hardcore way to do it is to just look at a circuit diagram and try to figure out how to lay that all out and make it all work. I've done a little bit of that, like with a breadboard, saying, all right, I see what all the component values are and how they all interconnect. I'm just going to try to make it. But for the most part, I'm looking at layouts and trying to duplicate those layouts, maybe with a few modifications here and there.
So when you make the modifications, what generally are you trying to change about the pedal that you're emulating?
Getting rid of noise is a big one.
Okay.
A lot of pedals are noisy. The one that I just built recently, it takes the 9 volts that you put into it and boosts it up to 33 volts. So if your input is too close to that charge pump that's upping the voltage, you get a lot of whine. So I moved the input path away from that just to try to minimize any noise. With like overdrive or distortion circuits, trying out lots of different diodes to change the character of the distortion is pretty common. And what I've been doing is just putting in sockets so you can just hot swap them.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So in that way, Andrew, I know that you use a lot of plugins, use a lot of digital like amp plugins. Is that where you're getting most of your effects, or are you sticking with physical pedals, or is it a combination of both, the two?
It's a combination of both. I really love hardware when I can use it. I do most of my recordings these days with my AX8 Fractal Audio Axe Effects. So arguably that is hardware, but arguably it's also software.
Sure.
The modeling
hardware with software.
Yeah. I get a lot of my effects through that. I mean, you know, Axe effects, they actually have really good effects. That actually has some of my favorite effects out there for guitar. Beyond that, I do a lot of stuff in the box, and that's primarily a financial thing and not a preference thing.
Okay, sure.
Actual
That's
hardware.
why I build everything too.
Yeah. I do
build
pedal board
pedals.
too. Yeah, I have a pedal board with some expensive pedals on it too. I have like a, you know, Strymon Timeline for delay, and I have Eventide pitch factor, and I got really into effects pedals a while ago. I was like listening to a lot of just trippy music, and I like making weird sounds, and I thought, like, how can I make my guitar not sound like a guitar? And I like spent a lot of money and a lot of time trying to do that for a couple years, and the end conclusion is, if you don't want it to sound like a guitar, use something that isn't a guitar. But I still got really the guitar is a very versatile instrument, especially with effects. So I do have quite a few pedals, and particularly when I'm gigging, I almost exclusively use actual pedals when I'm gigging. But the primary reason I'm using my Axe effects for recording is A, convenience, but B, it sounds really good. Like I have Strymon Timeline, which actually that is a digital pedal, but it's one of the best delay pedals out there, and I feel that the Axe effect sounds just as good.
Brian, do you use much do you use many like modeling amps or plugins?
So for a long time, I think it was when like Guitar Rig 2 or 3 came out, I went pretty deep down that rabbit hole of modeling, and Guitar Rig, Amplitube, PV has a cool one where you can like change component values in like amps and pedals, so you can go super deep into experimenting with that. I did that for a long time, but then about a year ago, I built an amp. Like, I'm going to build an amplifier. And I also built a box that converts the speaker out to a line out. So it provides the load that a speaker would, but then you can plug it directly into the computer, so I can still play silently, so I don't wake everyone up. So that really got me back into like, oh, I want to use an amp. And part of the reason I wanted to do that was when you're using modeling, you have unlimited choices.
Mm-hmm.
You can just spend all your time tinkering and being like, let me try this amp, let me try this amp, let me try this amp. What happens if I put this pedal here? What happens if I put that pedal there? And there's just this like decision paralysis and endless tinkering.
Yeah.
And I found myself tinkering instead of playing. And I was like, I want to just limit my options, plug in to the amp, and play.
Sure.
So then doing that, I was like, okay, well, now that I have this amp, if I want a compressor before it, I can't use a software compressor. So now I need to build a compressor. So that's actually what got me into building pedals, was that I built the amp. And I was like, I need things to go in front of the amp now.
Yeah.
So this is another instance where I think limitations can really be undervalued, potentially, where decision paralysis, this sort of embarrassment of riches, or just having too many options. It's that blank page. It's that looking where everything is endless, and if you attach some constraints, you can push as hard as you can against those constraints, and that's, I think, where some of that magic really happens, when you're working within those limits.
I wanted to just set myself limits, like have a box and just be able to make it sound as good as I could with that one thing, instead of, well, what happens if it's a Mark IV instead of a Mark III?
Did you have to go through all the other options C, D, E, F, G, and see how they fit in?
Yeah, exactly. That said, I do have a Mesa Boogie over here now too, though.
Andrew, you look like you had something to say.
Oh, I was just gonna say I want to
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's one thing I don't like about working in the box. And actually, when we were setting up, I had a lot of reverb on my voice before the thing, and that's because of my routing unit. I have like a 12-channel mixer here that I record everything through, and it doubles as an audio interface, which is cool. And the reason I got that is because I have, and the reason I started collecting hardware, like I have this like drum machine thing I can record audio into. I have the synth, I have the AX8, so I don't have to turn on a computer in order to write music and record music. It's nice to have options at times, but like it's so much more fun to just limit yourself and think, okay, what can I do with these tools? And even if you're in the box and you're not using hardware, you can still place limitations on yourself. Like Pody, you were just talking about like Mark IV, Mark III. One thing that I kind of said to myself is like, okay, if it sounds good, I'm gonna go with it. Like, because I totally get stuck in that trap of like, okay, which amp sounds the best, and I think that you can kind of or which speaker sounds the best, or which, and it's endless. Anything you're using. If you're using an organ sample, do I want the Mark II Rhodes from 1962 or 1965? And generally speaking, the differences are not, one is not better than the other. They're usually just different. So a lot of times
you put them in a mix.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah. And also like sometimes just making a decision is a good thing, because it's easy to belabor these decisions and feel like, oh man, if I didn't choose the right, cab for this, like it's gonna throw off the mix. It's like it's not. Just make a decision and move on with your life.
So set your parameters and work within those, and you can, like I said, you can push hard against the edges of those parameters and come up with something really, really fun, I think. Brian, if someone wanted to build their first pedal, would you suggest a kit to get started?
So I started with kits, and there are some very nice kits out there, but I was being cheap and I didn't want to buy the expensive kit, so I bought the like $20 kit off Amazon. I bought 3 of them. One of them.
Oh no, so you got a $60 kit, is what you're telling me?
Exactly.
You put the work in 3 times.
Yeah. So after that, I was like, forget this. I'm just going to totally build stuff from scratch. And everything that I've built totally from scratch has worked. Okay. That said, I still think a kit is probably a good place to start. Just don't buy the really cheap one.
Okay. To invest a little bit, because I know you have a background in working with hardware. So this wasn't. I'm sure there were new lessons to learn as you were building these, but you had at least a foundation of knowledge. What do you think is the most important piece of knowledge you should have, kind of going into building?
So my knowledge is all like self-taught, right? Like I didn't ever do any schooling in any of this. Hit up YouTube, watch somebody else do it. Like they're gonna give you lots of tips. Solder on something that isn't a circuit board first, because it's easy to fry a circuit board.
Sure.
But like if you've soldered guitars before, like a guitar is a lot more forgiving. So you just kind of have to hone those skills before you go to a circuit board. The stuff I'm building isn't on circuit boards typically. They're on what's called like Vero board or strip board, which just has big strips of copper. So that's actually easier to work with. The Mesa Boogie that I have over here, I just had to completely like take apart and replace all the caps, and it was leaking voltage onto the pots, which is really exciting. It's like,
I don't know what that means. That sounds bad.
Yeah.
That sounds.
But yeah, that is of course a mass-produced thing, so it's a circuit board, and I didn't particularly enjoy working on it.
Okay. Was that because it wasn't sort of made to be tinkered with, or just because it wasn't built the way you would have built it?
It's just harder to work on because everything's more compact, basically.
Sure. Like if you buy a PC that's already built versus building your own, you can make space and have a place for everything, where mass-produced one is going to be, they're going to use up every bit of that space if they can.
Yeah, they're trying to really be more efficient. It's almost more like working on a laptop as opposed to a tower.
Sure. That makes sense. All right. Well, I think right now we are going to put this conversation on pause. Again, if you have any questions, make sure you reach out to Brian Turner, that is UB Jurassic, in the chat. And we are going to have our first giveaway. So I'm going to say goodbye for now to Brian and Andrew. Bye, guys. We'll see you back very soon. But for now, if you want to win the first Ernie Ball prize pack, please listen to UB Jurassic in the chat for your chance to win everything that is on your screen right now. This is going to be 2 sets of guitar strings, 1 6-string set for your 6-string guitar, 1 4-string set for your bass, both of which are regular Slinky. You're going to get a dozen Ernie Ball picks. Picks from Ernie Ball. You're going to receive 3 picks from us here in Ubisoft at Rocksmith. You're going to receive a black Ernie Ball guitar strap, a package of Ernie Ball Wonder Wipes, and a peg winder. All of these from Ernie Ball can be yours if you listen to the instructions given to you by UB Jurassic in the chat. And you do need to follow the channel in order to win. I wish you all luck on that. We are shipping internationally. Once we ship, again, we are not back in the office, as you've probably assumed from the fact that I'm back here in my dining room. But once we get back in the office, we're going to ship all these out. So we're collecting the information from you right now so we can get those out as soon as we're back in the office. So good luck. And right now we are going to say hello to our performer for this week. This is CJ Blandford. He was recently a part of the community video that debuted a week or 2 ago. He was on that, and here's Casey.
Hey everybody, my name is Casey. I'm also known as CJ Blandford here on Twitch and on Twitter. You can also find me on Instagram and the forums as The Quick Mind. I've been playing guitar since the 90s. I was even in a couple of little high school bands, but I pretty much stopped playing guitar when I moved to college. I have to credit Rocksmith for getting me back into playing full-time. I kind of started to get back into it a little bit before I got Rocksmith, but the main reason I got Rocksmith was because of the Japanese DLC. I'm a huge fan of Japanese rock music, and it's so hard to find accurate tabs online. I've even imported a few books from Japan, but I found that the Rocksmith method is my preferred method of learning how to play a song now. So, thank you, Ubisoft. And I want to thank Doug, and I want to thank everybody at the studio in San Francisco for allowing me to perform these songs for you today. This song I'm going to perform for you right now is Shinsekai by Acid Man. One of the great things about Acid Man is that they mix so many different musical styles together. You've got influences from punk rock, you've got jazz, you've got some post-rock, you've got elements of bossa nova and R&B, and you've even got some orchestration, especially in some of their later albums. This song is from their 9th album, also called Shinsekai. This song has a lot of their hallmarks, which includes high energy, a lot of jazz chords, and a strong vocal melody. All right, so here we go. つ
Amazing performance.
What up, everyone? It's Andrew, and welcome to today's Tone Tips. Today I'm going to talk about compression. Compression is probably the least understood tool that you have at your disposal to make you sound good and sound professional. And that's because it's a lot of subtle tweaks. But without further ado, let's get into it. I think that the biggest thing that's misunderstood about compression is a lot of people think about it as a way to make you sound louder. And while that is certainly something you can do with compression, my opinion is that it's best to shape your sound, not just make it louder. So let's take a look at one of these compressors. Bada boom, bada bing. Here's this compressor. By the way, I'm using Logic's compressor. You can do all of this with a compression pedal, but I'm using Logic's compressor in this demonstration because it has this VU meter here, and you can actually see how the compressor is affecting the sound, and I think that's useful for a tutorial. But with a pedal, you can just use your ears. They all work pretty much the same. So anyways, if you don't know what a compressor is, a compressor basically, when you're playing, if you play a note beyond a certain volume, it'll turn that volume down. And so what that does is it just can kind of even out your sound, and it can also allow you to accentuate different parts of the sound. Right? So these dials all here are your tools that you can use to shape the sound. Threshold is the volume at which the compressor will start turning your sound down. So a good analogy is, let's say that you are listening to music real loud in your room, and your mom is trying to sleep and comes in the room and tells you to turn down the volume. Threshold is how loud you need to play your music before your mom comes to tell you to turn it down, right? And so in the case of playing on the guitar, this threshold right here can take place within a few milliseconds, right? You can play a note and the attack of the note is really, really loud, but the rest of the note is soft, right? So your mom's only going to tell you to turn down the part of that one note that went above the threshold, right? Okay, so you're listening to music, your mom tells you to turn it down. Ratio is the amount at which she is going to ask you to turn down the volume, right? So once it hits here, if you have a high ratio, your mom is pissed and she wants you to turn the volume way, way down. If it's only, noon and she's just trying to eat lunch, maybe, she doesn't tell you to turn it down too much, right? Okay, so now attack is the time with which, the time between when you hit the note, or when you start listening to music, when you hit the threshold, I should say, and your mom comes to, and you actually turn the music down, right? So your mom knocks on the door, 38 milliseconds later, you turn the volume down. And release is how long you wait until your mom leaves before you turn the music back up. In this case, 91 milliseconds, not the nicest thing, right? Anyways, let's hear how this affects the tone. So I recorded this funky little guitar part. Here it is with no compression. Okay, not bad. Now here's what it sounds like with compression. Ah, so much better in my opinion. Now, if you look at this VU meter, basically what it's saying is this is how much it's turning the volume down by. So if it's at 0, that means I'm not hitting minus 41 dB, and everything above that is louder than minus 41 dB. So take a listen. So it's turning it down by between 5 and 10 dB. So that actually can make it perceive as louder because you're hearing the quieter parts more in balance with the louder parts. Now, here's the important part when it comes to playing the funk is, or anything percussive, is attack and release. Because you can see that if the attack is 38 milliseconds, that means that it's going to take 38 milliseconds before you actually start getting compressed, right? So that means that up until 38 seconds, it's at its original volume, which means it's actually louder than the rest of the track. So if I just want that first 38 milliseconds to be uncompressed, it's going to give it a little bit more of a bite. So let's hear what it sounds like if I turn the attack way down. See, it feels really squashed. You don't really hear much of the attack. And you hear the more I turn that up, I kind of like it around 32. Okay, now release. If I turn the release way up, it's basically going to squash everything except for that first attack. And if I turn the release way down, it sounds a lot more natural. I like the release kind of around a middle area, kind of around there. And I should also mention that a ratio of 8 is quite a lot. Generally, I'm not going to use ratios this high, but in this particular instance, I like having a high ratio. If you listen to Wolfpack at all, this is similar settings to maybe something that they would use. They compress their guitars and basses quite a lot, and it gives them that kind of funky, really produced sound. Let's listen to this searing lead that I made. And this one, I have a short attack and a very long release, and that's because I don't really want it to sound percussive, and I want the tone to just ring out. So let's listen to it without compression. Okay, not bad, right? But it sounds a little bit, to me, just a little bit harsh. Now I put this compressor on with this short attack and long release, and without. Ooh, is that smooth? All right, one more thing. This one has a short attack and a shorter release, and that's because I just wanted to, rather than accentuate the attacks, I wanted to smooth out the attacks without making it sound overly compressed. So here's what it sounds like without compression. And with compression. little nicer and sweeter. So there you have it, folks. That's how you basically use a compressor. I don't really have time to go into this, but you may have noticed that I used a VCA here, I used an opto here, and I used a FET here. So those are just kind of the three main different types of compressors. I encourage you to Google all of them, but just to give you, they're all going to have a little bit of a different sound, and most guitar pedals are going to be based off of one of these three types of compressors. If I was going to buy a guitar pedal, I would probably go for a VCA or an FET. I use opto a lot when I'm mixing to smooth things out. For me, these tend to be a bit smoother. These are more transparent, and these are the most versatile. So I know that's a real quick explanation of these three, but I just wanted to mention that. So anyways, I hope that you found this useful in some way and you can mess around with it. So much of this stuff is just experimentation, finding out what you like. For example, I used a super high ratio on all of these because of how the guitar, well, 3 is not that high, but the guitar was recorded a little quiet, so I turned the ratio up. But I don't usually do that, so that kind of experimentation is really necessary. There is no right number because every time you record the guitar is going to be a bit different. Anywho, that's it for today's tone tips. Hope you dig. Talk to you next time.
Thank you, Adrian Levin. Thank you, CJ Blandford. Right now, we're going to give away 5 copies of the Queen 2 song pack on Steam. So if you're in the chat right now and you want a chance to win one of those 5 copies, once more, please listen to what UB Jurassic says in the chat. That pack includes Don't Stop Me Now, Love of My Life, Tie Your Mother Down, and We Will Rock You. So all 4 of those songs in the pack. You get a chance to win 1 copy of 5 of those. So again, please listen to UB Jurassic. You must be following the channel in order to win. Right now, we're going to head back to CJ Blandford, and then we will hear from our very own Dan Emmerich, and then Brian and Andrew will join us again to talk a little bit more about compression effects, whatever we want to talk about. That'll be up right after this.
The song I'm going to perform for you is Dead Man's Party by Oingo Boingo. This is one of 2 songs we have in the library composed by Danny Elfman. Now, I know it's not October and the song is usually played a lot at Halloween parties, but this is actually one of my favorite songs to perform in the library, and I play it pretty much all year round. One of the great things about this song is just the songwriting and how it mimics being at a party. There's a lot of conversation going on between all of the different instruments. They take the call and response element and really just make a whole song out of it. So the vocal will do a melody, the guitar will come back with another melody, and then the horns will come in with something else. And it really makes you feel like you're at a party and you're hearing all these different snippets of conversation happening around you. But that's also one of the things that makes this song tricky, is that a lot of the phrases are never quite the same, and the guitar melody happens on the upbeat, so trying to get the timing right can be tricky, but also it's never quite the same. But it is one of those songs that allows you to really kind of make it your own as you're playing it. All right, so let's take a look.
masterful performance.
Hi everybody, it's Dan Amrick, and I'm back in my home, like you are, but you're not in my home. I'm in my home, and I have all these guitars. And one of those guitars that I wanted to show you today was the compromise I was looking for between my aesthetics and tradition. Now, I love the sound of a Telecaster, that sort of spank, that bite, that twang that you get from a country kind of guitar, but also it's very useful for rock. And of course, as I have said many times on the show before, I like the sparkle. I like high-end, I like treble frequencies in my guitar. But Telecasters are kind of boring to me visually. Like, they're a big slab of a guitar. It's not very comfortable when I wear it. I like the goofy offsets and, you know, crazy colors and crazy shapes. And so what I wanted was a Telecaster that had the crazy colors and shapes that matched my life. And I found that just a couple of years ago with the Ibanez Talman. Now, the Talman is an original design from Ibanez that they put out in the 90s. If you're an Offspring fan, you might recognize this body shape. It's what Noodles from the Offspring played for many years. He was an endorser. When they reissued it about a year and a half ago, they did so with 3 single coil pickups or the very distinctive Telecaster single chrome neck pickup and a slanted bridge pickup. So I liked it, and so I watched, and I was looking for a sale or looking for a used guitar. One showed up on Reverb that was already upgraded in all the important ways that I would have wanted to upgrade it. It came with locking tuners, which is something that I really like, but the pickups were okay. You know, they weren't like name brand or fancy pickups. And the knobs were just sort of like cheesy plastic Stratocaster knobs. I'm like, well, that doesn't look right on a Tele. Well, the previous owner of this said, I agree. And they took the time to upgrade not only the knobs with really beautiful chrome dome knobs, which is what is traditional on a Telecaster style guitar, but also they replaced the pickups with Seymour Duncan quarter pounders. Now, the quarter pounder series is known for high output. It's a rock pickup. So I figured this would give me what I was looking for, some of the twang and some of the spank that you would get from a Telecaster style guitar, especially with where this pickup is placed compared to the bridge and where you play it, but with a little bit more girth and a little bit more growl for rock. And that's exactly what I got. I'm not even running any distortion on that. That's just the pickups through a compressor giving me some of the grit that I like. And you can hear that spank. So I'm just saying, if you're looking for a specific style of guitar and aesthetically it doesn't do it for you, you might be surprised what you find from other vendors going, we like that idea, but we have a mix on it. And this was the perfect remix of Telecaster for me. It's bright blue sparkle. They also made it in bright red sparkle if you're so inclined. And yeah, being able on a standard platform with basic pickups in a standard configuration that you can easily upgrade, I actually wound up getting this for less than the price new. And I think the person selling it just needed to get rid of it because I got an unbelievable deal that to this day, I'm like, that, you know, like they come around once in a blue moon. But it was upgraded for less than the price of even new, and it was in pristine condition. I bought this in a nice case, and it's a forever keeper for me. Maybe there's a guitar out there that's a forever keeper for you. Keep looking, keep playing. Let me know if you're looking for something. I can often advise. I am the Guitar Whisperer. I would love to help you find your guitar. Just leave messages in the chat. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.
And welcome back to the live portion of today's Rocksmith Developer Stream. I am still your host and community developer, Doug Lilly. Welcome back. I want to say thank you to Dan Amrick for showing off his Talman, as well as running the board behind the scenes here. And very, very special thanks to CJ Blandford for submitting some performances to us this week. Great job playing. And just what a nice guy. I mean, incredibly nice things he said. Really good information he gave before both performances. One thing I wanted to ask about or mention was he said that there were 2 Danny Elfman tracks available in Rocksmith. I believe he's referring to the Batman theme for the second track. He can let me know if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, Danny Elfman, in addition to being an Oingo Boingo, composes a huge number of movies, mostly with Tim Burton. But I think there are a few outside of the Burton family. We do have some time for some more questions. So if you've got any questions, please make sure you ask UB Jurassic in the chat. Otherwise, let's say hello once more to our guests, Andrew Levin and Brian Pody. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Screen.
Still here.
Still here. Good. You didn't bail on me. Let me make sure that I've got camera on both of you. Yeah, there you are. Before I get too far into some of the questions that we got, let's get some plugs. Andrew, you are about to have a new release.
I
You just had a release.
literally like an hour ago. Right before the stream.
What came out an hour ago?
Just a single. It's like the most emo track I've ever written, and I wrote it before COVID, and it's about death. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have released that now.
Well, too late. Yeah. It's out.
It's out. So the Bay Bridge just premiered it. They're a local music publication, part of KQED. So there's that. So that's cool. It's on all my social medias.
Give us those links. What are you on social medias?
At Andrew Levin, Levin, music on the Instagrams. I've been doing a lot of Instagram stuff recently, which feels weird to say, but it is a pretty good tool for.
So at Andrew Levin on Instagram is part of the best way.
Andrew Levin music.
You know, music on Instagram is the best way. That'll get you to where you need to go to find everything.
Once I posted on Instagram, because again, the article came out an hour ago. Like it came out like 30 minutes before the stream, so I haven't had time to post about it. So
so as soon as this is over,
if you follow me, I'll post it.
There you go.
But otherwise, you can look up the Bay Bridge, the newspaper, and they just posted it, so you can see it there. It's also on all of the stores, Spotify and iTunes and SoundCloud and Apple Music and Deezer and
Just all,
do you want me to keep listening?
You stream? No, that's fine. That's fine. We can stop there.
YouTube.
And Brian Pody, you also have an Instagram at Pody Guitars.
That's right. Yeah.
Pody is Poedy. I just want to clarify. Poedy Guitars. What do we see there?
Guitars, amps, and pedals. Just kind of whatever I'm working on at the moment. Okay. Currently, it's full of the Mesa Boogie that I've been working on. That found its way into my life when a friend got kicked out of his studio space yet again.
Oh no!
I think I know it.
Yeah, that's so sad. Yeah.
So he was like, "I don't have a place for this. I gift it to you." And I was like, "Wow, this is super broken."
Thanks for that. Thanks for the project.
Yeah.
Before we get too far outside of Instagram, I also do want to mention CJ Blandford is on Twitch and Twitter as CJ Blandford, and then he also illustrates and is on Instagram under the Quick Mind. And if you were doing the form clues on Fridays, he for a while I think he was answering he was primarily answering a lot of those clues for a long while. So good job there, the Quick Mind. He lived up to his name. What can I say? So I do have some questions wanted to go over. Jean Thruway and Andrew, I think you answered this in chat, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, there was a lot of comments, so some of them maybe got lost in the
have a follow-up to this. So the question from Jean 308 was, is compression the same as attenuation? Mm-hmm. And I have, before you answer that question, I have my own question. What is attenuation?
So attenuation is when you turn a signal down.
Okay. What do you mean?
Like in volume.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. So if you buy a pair of earplugs, the attenuation level might be minus 12 dB, and that means it makes, when you put the earplugs in, it makes everything minus 12 dB quieter.
Okay.
Or I don't know if that's the opposite. It makes it 12 dB quieter, because I guess making it minus 12 dB quieter would be 12 dB louder, and that's
a double negative.
That's a double negative.
Yeah. You should be ashamed. So is compression the same as attenuation, now that we have that out of the way?
Attenuation is involved in compression, but they're not the same thing, because attenuation, I mean, I guess technically you could say yes, but like attenuation is just when you turn down a signal. And generally when you're talking about attenuation, when it comes to amplifiers, is attenuating without affecting the tone or the gain, the input gain, right? Because if you just for a lot of amps, depending on what amp you have, if you turn the master volume down, you're turning down the volume on the power amp, which is going to affect the tone. And there are amps that have an attenuation feature on top of that, which will allow you to turn the volume down supposedly without affecting the tone. Okay. And jump in, Pody, if you have any thoughts on that too. I know Dr. Z has,
but I don't think anyone's interested.
Okay.
So attenuation is part of compression, but it's
yeah.
not the same. So all apples are fruit, but not all fruit are apples.
Now that I have my hands here and I can like do this visual thing, because I didn't want to be like on camera that whole thing, because it might have been just weird. I don't know. But anyways, so like basically when you're compressing something, once, as I said, once you get above a certain volume limit, it turns the volume down, which makes it sound like, okay, so it can only get this loud before it gets turned down by this much. And when the difference between a compressor and a limiter, by the way, is a limiter is just going to say, okay, let's say that you set the volume to -4 dB. So here's silence, here's all of the loudness in the signal. Once it hits -4 dB, it's just going to cut off at that volume and stay right there, right? So that's a limiter. A compressor is a little bit different, because once it gets above this level, it's going to turn down the volume by a certain amount, right? So it scales. So it can still get louder than, let's say I set it to -41 dB on that tutorial. It can still get louder than -41 dB, unlike a limiter, which is going to just stop it there, but you get to decide how much you want to turn it down by. So a little tiny bit of compression, it's still going to go up to its top volume, but just going to get turned down just a little, or almost its top volume, just going to get turned down a little bit. If you put on a ton of compression, it's going to turn it down quite a lot. But the reason that it's not exactly the same, so it attenuates the signal above a certain volume, but the thing is that you can then make that perceived to be louder than it was, because even though it's turning the volume down, by turning that volume down, it allows you to turn the volume of those quieter sections up without peaking the meter. Because when especially if you're recording digitally, you really don't want peaking. The way that distortion works, analog distortion, the good distortion that you like, is just turning the volume way the hell up, and then it distorts a bunch because the speaker freaks out and it's like, oh man, what's going on? And it distorts the signal. Distortion was an accident. When it just happened because when people were just using tube amps, that's all that was available. People would just crank the volume and it would distort. But analog compression is pleasing to the human ear. Digital distortion is not pleasing to the human ear. It just sounds like doo-doo. What compression allows you to do when you're in a digital recording environment, which most people are these days, is turn that volume up without having that doo-doo, digital compression sound. Sure. So even though you're turning stuff down, it makes you perceive it as being louder in that one instance of how to use a compressor. But again, I really think it's important to think about compression as a way to shape the sound rather than just make things louder. Because a lot of people think about it, oh, you're just making it louder, but really you're thinking about the attack, how sustain and release. That's really important.
I got a signal chain question from Random Factor. Is the compressor the last pedal before the amp?
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, usually I put my compressor first.
Compressor first. Okay.
Yeah.
Same, Brian?
I would do the same. Yeah, because as Andrew was just explaining, because you're bringing those peaks down and then you're bringing all of your signal back up, you're raising your noise floor. So if you run through a bunch of other pedals, those are all adding hiss and hum and whatever garbage into your signal at a really low level. And if you then run it into a compressor, you're saying, all right, garbage, I want to bring you up here where I can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. And you probably don't actually want to do that. So
probably not.
It's best in front, and even working in the box in your DAW, you're probably going to put that compressor in first, and then you're going to put in all your other effects. But because you're kind of squashing that dynamic range and then running it into other pedals, you kind of push all those other pedals a little harder, which makes them all a little nicer and gooier sounding.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and it makes your guitar tone going into those pedals more even, or if you use it in that particular way. I mean, there might be times where like you're trying to do some avant-garde thing with your reverb, so you like compress your reverb. But that's going to sound really weird, right? Because like when you think about the whole point of reverb is to make it sound like you're in a space, right?
Yeah.
And generally speaking, there's a decay that sounds somewhat natural. Again, unless you're doing something avant-garde with your reverb, where here's where the reverb's loudest, it decays over time. If you compress the hell out of that signal, you have the reverb that's decaying, and it's not really letting it decay until the end,
Right?
And that's just going to sound kind of weird. It's not exactly the same as how like the story with Phil Collins, how he did the
noise gate.
gated reverb, in the 80s. It's a little bit different than that.
Okay.
But it's that same kind of thing. You're going to get a really weird kind of hyper realistic thing that 90% of the time isn't going to sound good, unless that's like really what you're going for.
But you kind of have to know that you're going for that sound.
Yeah. And on that note, I almost never record with reverb going into my DAW, because I might want to put compression on the guitar after I've already recorded it. So it's good to have a dry signal so that you can have post compression reverb. I will sometimes record with delay, because I really like the sound of the delay on my AX8, and it kind of changes the way that I play a bit. But that's not going to be quite as messed up by compression as reverb will be. Really, if you compress the hell out of your reverb, it's not going to sound quite right.
It's really noticeable.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you all have time for a couple more questions?
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Okay, great. We had one from, hopefully I get the name right, Demig Hitman. Hopefully, I apologize for the pronunciation. On amps, what is the difference between volume and master volume?
So usually you're going to have a volume that's after like your first gain stage in the amp. So you're going to plug in, it's going to go through one gain stage where it boosts your volume. Then you're going to have your volume knob, and that affects your volume into all of the subsequent gain stages. So if it's, JCM 800, like I have over here, it's got 4 gain stages. So you're turning up the volume into those other 3 gain stages. And then your master volume is after all of those gain stages. So by putting more volume into those gain stages, you're increasing distortion, you're increasing overdrive, you're getting more harmonics out of your signal, making it sound bigger and fatter. But if you have a non-master volume amp, then suddenly you're extremely loud and blowing your windows out. So by putting in a master volume after all of those gain stages, you then are turning down the amount of signal that you're sending to the power amp, like Andrew was alluding to before. Technically, it's before the phase inverter, but we don't need to go into that.
So you could have a loud sound at a quiet volume.
Exactly.
Is that
yeah. And it's... Go ahead, Andrew. We're probably going to say the same thing.
Yeah, it's similar to what I was talking about with attenuation, and that if you turn the master volume down, you're able to turn the volume down with affecting your tone less. However, most amps that are using a master volume, it's still a analog power amp master output, so it's going to affect the tone a bit. And that would be, to my understanding, the difference between a true attenuation and master volume. A lot of attenuators too will, rather than giving you a knob, give you like a option, like you flip this switch and it sounds like it's 30 volt amp or a 30 watt amp, and this switch is 15 watt, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah. So even with the master volume, you're not hitting your phase inverter or your power amp as hard, and because you're not hitting those sections as hard, you're not getting the saturation from those tubes as well.
Yeah.
So it will change your sound, which is why things like the aux amp top box exist, because then you can just crank everything up and turn it down after.
Yeah. Okay. iOS Squared asked way earlier in the chat, at the minute, there are a lot of freebies for music production, plugins, etc. Have you found any recently that are your favorites that you would recommend people check out?
Valhalla.
Recording.
Sorry, I was about to burp.
I was going to say that one too.
Valhalla.
Let's talk about Valhalla. What are we looking at there?
They make reverbs and delays. They make really nice stuff. It tends to be reasonably priced because they don't bundle a bunch of stuff together usually. It's like if you buy a reverb from them, it's one reverb. It is one sound, but they tend to sound really good. And yeah, they just released a free one earlier this week that our whole audio team was like, oh, check this out.
Yeah.
Right. Jean38 has a follow-up on the topic of signal chain. Does that mean putting any kind of distortion first is generally not a good idea?
It depends on what you were going for, because if you put a compressor before the drive, you're going to be hitting it with a bit more signal, and it'll probably give it a little bit more of a nice drive that you're going for. If you want to, if you really like the sound of the drive and you want to accentuate the sound of the drive without a compressor beforehand, then you can compress it. But usually, if in a pedal board context, 99% of the time, I would put the compressor first. In a mixing context, like one use that I've found that I do quite frequently, there's a plugin by Soundtoys, and they also have some freebie stuff. And Soundtoys is like one of my favorite companies in the world. Like if I got to go to their factory, it'd be like Disneyland for me because I'm a nerd. They have a plugin called the Decapitator, which is way less brutal than it sounds. It's like a very, very subtle distortion, but like I put it on a lot of stuff, like because it kind of just sometimes it's so subtle you can barely perceive it, but it just gives it that little tiny bit of like analog warmth. Okay. And I like the sound of that, and sometimes I want to compress that sound because I want to make that sound a little bit more even, right? So in that case, I'm not going for a distortion. I'm going for like, okay, I like the sound that this plugin is giving me, and I just want to make it a little bit more even. In the context of guitar tone, yeah, 99% of the time I'm going to put the compressor first. And I don't know if you would. And also something to consider, and I touched on this a little bit in my video, is distortion is a form of compression. Like you're compressing your signal when it's distorting. So if you put the compressor after the distortion, you're kind of like compressing the distortion, which already kind of compressed it. I don't know. Yeah. What do you think, Bodhi?
I would agree. I mean, I would say there's no wrong way to set up your signal chain. Like you can definitely experiment. And if you're going for something kind of out there, you might find something really cool. But there are definitely common practices that exist because that's going to give 90% of people what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a pretty normal tone that you're going to hear on a record, then following those sort of best practices is going to get you there a lot faster.
Yeah. Cool. And we can briefly touch on just like, compression, and then distortion. Then you got mod effects like chorus and phaser and flanger, then time-based effects like usually delay and then reverb. And that's going to be general signal path you want on a pedal board.
That's a great segue to we're gonna do two more questions. Quivery Straw asks, what would you recommend for a good phaser tone setup?
You mean in terms of compression, or like just what are some phaser pedals that I like?
I think it's probably where in the chain. Like what do you want in that chain for a good phaser tone?
Yeah,
I think that's the question.
Usually after distortion.
Okay. So compression, distortion, phaser.
Yeah, phaser, flanger, and chorus, they're all mod-based effects. You can kind of play with it. I guess usually I would, now that I'm thinking about it, I'd probably put the phaser before the chorus, but you can mess with that. But there's not a lot of instances where I personally would use phaser and chorus at the same time. But I mean, you totally could, especially if you want some like wacky tones.
And if you play with distortion from your amp and you have an effects loop, you're usually going to want to put it in your effects loop.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to be distorting that phaser sound instead of phasing your distortion sound, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Phasing the distortion is going to sound cleaner, right? Because you have your distortion sound, now you're messing with that. Whereas if you're phasing it beforehand, it's like you have like this weird swirly tone that you're like distorting. You're not going to really hear the actual phaser that much. You might get some cool, trippy
artifacts almost.
Yeah, but it's just not going to sound as clean. And I like dirty tones. I like weird stuff. I'm a weird dude, so I might mess with that. But if I'm like setting up a pedal board for a show, might probably would put the phaser later. Yeah,
and
and
also
then
that EVH dude has that good one knob phaser.
or
Phase
MXR.
90.
Just up
That's
and down.
MXR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like simple pedals though.
Same here. No, I have the Phase 90 on my pedal board, and people kind of like talk down on the Phase 90, but I actually really like that pedal.
Classic sound. Yeah.
Last question before we go for the day. Zigo Z asks, you get $500 in an online music gift store, or you get a $500 gift card for an online music store. What is the first thing you look for?
Thanks.
Hypothetically, let's say. Everybody say thank you for
working so hard. You know, sometimes it just feels so good to be appreciated. And
hypothetically, you're given a $500 gift card to an online music store. What's the first thing you buy?
I might get a. Can I spend $300 of my own dollars on top of that?
He did not specify. Let's see if he says in chat in the next couple of seconds. Let's say no. Let's say you're just working with that. Otherwise, outside of this $500, you're broke. You got nothing going on. You got $500 to spend, and you can only spend it on this online music store.
Once you go, Pody, I got to think for a sec.
I actually have my answer. At first, I was like, that's an impossible question, but I thought of it because I bought these recently because I needed a new set of nice monitors, and these things are getting absolutely rave reviews, and I think they sound really good. I've never had anything that had such a clear, like, stereo image. Just sitting here listening, I'm like, the hi-hat's right there, and the guitar's there, and the bass is over there. Like, they sound great. They're the Kali LP6 monitors, and you can pick them up for under $500 for a pair, so you'll have money left over.
That's good to know because I want them.
Is yours the same answer? Are you just stealing Pody's answer?
No, because I'm reckless and irresponsible, and I usually go for things that are like, just like, here's a wacky sound I paid $500 for. I have some decent monitors, but they're not. Those sound awesome, and I actually probably will buy those. So thanks, Pody. I'm probably gonna buy them soon. But if I just got a gift and I'm like, okay, time to get wacky with it, I might get a. This is such a hard question.
Thanks, Z.
I've been kind of wanting to get a Digitone by Electron. It's like a little sampler thing.
Okay.
Kind of want to get a Digitone.
Digitone?
Diggy, because they're Swedish.
Okay.
Yeah, and they spell Electron with a K. I want a Digitone. One of those Line 6. I guess I'm not playing live right now. But like, yeah, one of those little Line 6 pocket things. Those are really cool. The little like Line 6 amp modeler. The Helix, but like the small Helix Stomp, I think it is.
Oh yeah, that thing looks kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be really good for playing live because like you could just dial in all your tones and then it's like that big, and just bring it and it sounds good. Might go for one of those.
I think Amplitude Max is like $4.99. You can get every piece of like digital modeling gear you could ever desire.
Very good. And it's digital, so there's probably no shipping.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Perfect.
You don't have to go outside and touch anything.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you both very much for being here today. Andrew Levin, once more, you had what's the name of your new release? Is it a single? Is it an album?
Yeah, it's just a single. If I Died Today, it's a dark song.
Okay.
I was like, man, should I release this right now? And I had already started releasing it before all the craziness. So I'm releasing. I can't go back on it, but it's really emo. It's the most emo thing I've ever written. So if you want to hear me bare my soul, there you go.
All right, and that's you can find you at Andrew Levin Music on Instagram. Brian Pody, we can find you at Pody Guitars. Where you show off whatever you're working on, be it upgrading, building, luthering. What's the verb version of luthier? Luthering. That's fun. I like words. And then again, CJ Blandford can be found at CJ Blandford on both Twitter and Twitch. And then he is the Quick Mind on Instagram and the Ubisoft forums. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Also, thanks to Dan Amrick and Brian Turner for their help with the stream. We've got one more raffle to do, but I want to go ahead and say goodbye to Andrew and Brian. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure, my pleasure. For the viewers, you have one more chance to win an Ernie Ball prize pack. So please listen to UB Jurassic for instructions on how you can win everything that is on your screen now. Hopefully, you're gonna get two sets of guitar strings from Ernie Ball, both of which are regular Slinky. You're gonna get a 6-string set and a 4-string set. You're gonna get a dozen picks from Ernie Ball. You're gonna get 3 of these Spectrum Plectrum picks from us here at Rocksmith. You're gonna receive an Ernie Ball strap in black, as well as a package of Ernie Ball Wonder Wipes and a peg winder. All of that from Ernie Ball once we get back in the studio, which we don't currently have an ETA for, but as soon as we're there, we're gonna send all these prizes out to all of our winners. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back next week, next Thursday, same time, same place. Again, thank you for joining us. And if you're interested in participating in the stream, as you've seen over the past couple months, we've had a lot of community guests, and we're very thankful for them. But yeah, we want to know if you want to get involved somehow. So reach out to us. You can whisper to me here at Rocksmith Game on Twitch. You can also reach us on Instagram and Twitter at Rocksmith Game, and Facebook.com/Rocksmith, as well as Rocksmith.com for the forums. Let us know there if you want to jump in somehow, and we can talk. We'll talk about it. We'll get some people on here. It'll be fun. We will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us at the Rocksmith developer stream. Once more, I'm Doug Lilly, and we'll see you very soon.